Is there a place in photography for the banal? In today's saturated market of images jostling for position on social media, on websites and photo sharing platforms, and now we have AI promising, well, anything and everything, as we saw recently. Well, thank God, or Jared Polin, I didn't see what sounded like some truly unsavory images. I think Polin might have had something to do with Petapixel taking down what from the remaining descriptions were pretty awful. So yeah, I didn't see them before the backlash convinced Petapixel to pull them from their site. And I think they certainly didn't have to post them in the first place to report on the seamier side of the brave new world of AI. Or were they just after clicks with sensationalism? But that's not, thank goodness, what this video is about. At least not primarily. But the main question, is it essential that photos be eye-catching, dramatic, impressive, spectacular, dazzling, shocking, whatever adjective you want to use? Hi, Ray here with another little chat about photography. But first, can I ask a favor? These interludes, different from the more usual reviews and Nikon news that I make, don't, relatively speaking, get many views. But they do hold the attention, more so than anything else that I create, of viewers that do watch and do presumably enjoy them. They have high retention rate in YouTube stats lingo. So if you do enjoy these chats or any of my content, but haven't yet subscribed to my channel, I think it's 80% of visitors to my channel haven't, then please give this video a like and consider subscribing. That really is the lifeblood of this thing that I do on YouTube. So, first, what do we mean by banal? Well, someone or perhaps a few people have actually proposed the designation banal photography. So perhaps we now do have a genre. And I think it's already competing for your attention on Instagram. There's even a Flickr group, for crying out loud. But at the risk of sounding vain, for better or worse, I've been making banal photos for decades. And I'm not claiming to be a pioneer either. So I think this trend towards recognizing the ordinary image is maybe a reaction to the competition to create fantastic photos. As a place saver, sticky note or whatever, let's define, for the sake of this discussion, as a contributor to a thread on banal photography did not too long ago, that by banal we mean photos that depict ordinary objects, ordinary places in a documentary fashion, unadorned. So before AI promised to enable whatever fantasy erupted from our minds onto the nearest screen, and I'm not outright against the actualization of that fantasy, call it surrealism realized, but I have very mixed feelings about AI that I've expressed in other videos, one that'll probably stay on the back burner a while longer as I come to terms with some of the questions that I've asked myself. But just as a thought experiment, could it be that we are seeing another schism like the one that photography provoked when it first disrupted the art world in the 19th century, when the art world considered photography a fraud, and photographers intruders, too lazy and stupid to learn how to paint? So let me back up by way of a bit of photo history. At the dawn of photography, responding to the rejection of photography as an artistic medium by the art establishment, many photographers, at least the ones that wanted to be accepted as artists, they tried to make their photos look artistic, like paintings. The practitioners of this genre, if we can call it that, were called pictorialists, and they used all kinds of sometimes crude processes to create their arty photos. Scratching negatives, abrading the finished prints. William Mortenson's work would be a typical, not to mention masterly, example. But we now probably call these works kitsch, which is another, I think, related entrant into modern art, but let's not get sidetracked. Around 1930, a contrary group arrived on the scene, led by photographers like Ansel Adams, who actually called Mortensen the Antichrist, Willard Van Dyke, Edward Weston, famous photographer of seashells, bell peppers, and nudes. They formed the group F64. F64, a very small aperture common to the big view camera lenses that they favored, that resulted in sharp photos with endless depth of field. The camera's greatest virtue, they said, was the very fact of verisimilitude. There's that word again. I love it. Clearness and definition, as they defined it in their founding manifesto. That clarity, they argued, should be embraced, not degraded, or perhaps we might say dehanced today, with outdated notions of what art should look like. And so we entered the era of straight photography. Not that Adams et al. Were the first to practice simple, unadorned photography, and we certainly shouldn't mistake what Ansel and his colleagues were doing as simple point-and-shoot photography, not with an 8x10 view camera. Arguably, photographers like Jacques-Henri Lartigue and André Cortez had perfected the art of the snapshot long before. But the California Club, if you will, rebelled against the art snobs, founding an alternate atelier of sorts to promote what they considered pure photography. That's just a bit of a Puritan ring to it, eh? And that was a few years before Fuji adopted the pure photography thing as a marketing slogan for its X Pro 3 camera. I visited the Photographer's Gallery in Carmel in 1984, a day or two after Adams' death. But that's another story for another day. The straight shooters were at odds with the Photo Secession, a sort of highbrow club for the pictorialists, led by Alfred Stieglitz from his 291 gallery in New York, that showed his arty photography alongside the experimental painting styles of Henri Matisse, Auguste Rodin, Pablo Picasso, and Paul Cézanne. I could make a whole video about this conflict. Should I? But I mention it here just to illustrate what I think is this ongoing tension that's still part of photography criticism today. And I might risk perpetuating it here. Banal photography is, I think, whether consciously or not, but I think the establishment of Flickr groups has it firmly in the realm of a conscious movement. It's a push against the cliched realm of the spectacular photo. Now, I should interject here to say that I'm not trying to referee in this century a battle almost as old as photography itself, because I like all kinds of photographs. But I guess I think there's limits, to my eye at least, as to what counts as a worthy photographic subject, and today, more importantly, what kind of editing that subject is subjected to. Again, I want to stress that one person's banal beauty is another's swipe left. Taste really can't be arbitrated unless you want to invite a social media backlash. Back in the film days, well, in my film days, let's say the 70s, the market was flooded with special effects filters. Things like rainbow effects, tobacco filters, softening filters, star filters. I think I used my star filter maybe twice. I still have it in a box over there somewhere. But I avoided these things like the plague, as well as cross-processing, where, say you develop positive film in negative developer. All the hipsters of the day did it. I guess I'm, generally speaking, a straight photographer. And maybe it's because that I'm not a morning person that I don't have many sunrise photos in my archive, for instance, especially in summer. It's only really at this time of year, I'm in the northern hemisphere, that I'm up before dawn. Again, I'm not dissing sunrise or sunset photos. They're often really pretty. But my idea of a good sunrise photo is probably reflected in a photo that I made on a November day in 1984, when I did drag myself out of bed before dark to climb to the top of a condemned swing bridge. If it's spectacular, it's only because of the flock of crows that, I don't know, maybe they were warming up on this frigid morning in the industrial emissions from a smokestack. The eastern horizon, behind the newly erected golf ball of the still existing science world, was a riot of color that I'm glad doesn't distract from this image shot on Ilford HP5 with my old Mamiya Flex medium format camera. And I went to all that trouble to document this urban landscape because, as I say, the bridge itself was condemned And I knew that both sides of Vancouver's False Creek was slated for development. And 40 years later, it's now wall-to-wall glass condo towers. I don't know that that documentary photo is a good example of banal. It's a very good example of a photo from that series that hasn't sold very well. But I do know that I've consciously set out to try to find, through my photography, what I've before now called the divine in the ordinary. I don't know if I've succeeded in that mission, but that has been my intention, at least since the idea occurred to me over 40 years ago. And the fact that few people see anything numinous under the ordinary subjects that have attracted my eye, it really hasn't deterred me from trying to honor those subjects with my time, not to mention the financial investment involved in this passion for paying homage, I guess, to little things. Another homily that we hear when it comes to photography is that it's all about the light. Sunrises and sunsets certainly can provide extraordinary light and color. And when I got up this morning, I did comment to my wife, who'd gotten up a half hour before me, on the extraordinary, spectacular, if you like, mauve tint of the clouds on the northwest horizon as the sun rose over the mountains. And we have the good fortune, well, we have the view we always dreamed of, realized 5 years ago by moving to this property. And I often photograph it. I make time lapses of the weather over the mountains, and I actually love doing that. But these are photos and videos that I consider almost too easy. You know what I mean? They're postcards from the edge, you might say. The edge of this ragged coastline in the North Pacific, which is spectacular. And if you do get up at 3 a.m. on a stormy day, get yourself to a perch on a cliff somewhere, and all the elements come together, well, you might end up with a postcard perfect. Well, just a minute. After a good dose of vibrancy, Lightroom masking, or whatever software of choice or combination, then it'll be ready to compete on social media. But watch out for those halos. Again, I'm not trying to enforce my idea of pure photography. But with all this high-tech digital processing wizardry, are we closer to the perfect photograph? I've said this before on this channel, and it applies today as it did in days gone by. With all the options available to us, restraint is really the most important tool in our box at this point. I suspect that the resurgence of traditional, analog if you like, processes is a search for something transcendent. And with all those newfangled tools, now enhanced by AI, we're tempted perhaps to polish things too much. I'll say again, the Japanese concept of wabi-sabi, rough edges, has something to teach. But more than that, because I'm not advocating carelessness or sloppy work practices, the recognition of banal photography is, I think, another search for simplicity. That's what I'm trying to say. Appreciation of the small things, the details, the ordinary. We're not all blessed with a spectacular view. We aren't all capable of hauling a backpack full of camera gear to the top of a mountain. Well, I once did. That's where my pro career actually began. But even then, I put my Kodachrome away between climbing trips and went looking for more subtle subjects. I can distinctly recall loading my camera on my bicycle. In those days, that was often how I rolled, with the intention of discovering something quotidian, but somehow imbued with meaning. It's a very difficult thing to accomplish because, I don't know, it's almost as if intention, deliberation, undermines awareness. Does that make any sense? We tend to get distracted by the spectacular, passing by the mundane, yet precious, even sublime details of our world. And that might be as close as the windowsill. So yeah, I'm not saying that you should ignore the sun rising on another day, that you should dismiss the purple or gunmetal blue clouds at dawn. Love those. I have another video on those symbols in the works. And though I love the way black and white simplifies, even amplifies, I'm not suggesting we all revert to monochrome photography. But I know that I'm often seduced by technicolor scenes when there's not much else going on underneath. And everything that catches our eye can't necessarily be translated into a two-dimensional photograph. Who are some of the better known practitioners of this brave new, not so new genre of photography? I'll caution beforehand that I'm not sure any of the following photographers see themselves as proponents of any particular cause or trend. But they have been identified by others as photographers who do illuminate things often passed over. So, in no particular order, Stephen Shore, William Eggleston, one of my favorite photographers in or out of any genre, Wolfgang Tillmans. Those are a few that spring to mind. I'm sure there's many more that could be mentioned in relation to this discussion, and I've mentioned a few that, in my opinion, whatever you want to call it, somehow managed to imbue the commonplace with some kind of otherworldly significance. Can you add more? I'd like to hear your definition of banal photography, examples of this kind of work, if it can be categorized. Is there even a need to define it? It is perhaps just an umbrella to shelter bad photos. I'll just claim my crappy photos as banal, and they're art. Wabi-sabi, no more failures. More than a few colleges teach that ruse in their curriculum, it seems to me. But what makes a photo of an ordinary object or scene great? That's a conversation that I'd really like to start in the comments. If the photo secession was a battle with painting, is this trend of simplicity or returning to analog processes, if that's what it is it a battle with digital or its offspring, AI imagery? I'm not sure it comes from the same place, because those battling the pictorialists were attempting to free photography from the constraints of artistic tradition, right? So photography could stand by itself as a new medium. These are unformed or unresolved thoughts to end with, but it feels like we are in uncharted territory at the same time as reliving an argument that was perhaps never completely settled. And is the impulse to get noticed in the arena of social media, is that different to the age-old struggle to be recognized for one's work? Again, I'd appreciate your thoughts. And I hope you found this meditation on ordinary photos unique. If you did, again, please do give it the old thumbs up, and if this is your first visit to my channel, please consider subscribing. Hit that notification bell to be alerted to new content. In the meantime, take care. Cheers. We'll see you later.